Hi, today the math department is presenting their piece from our summer reading. The chapter we're focusing on is titled, How Can I Teach Students the Skills They Need When Standardized Tests Require Only Facts? The section that we're starting with from chapter 2 is, Knowledge is essential to reading comprehension. If everyone could take a few minutes to read the following short passage. Those of you that read this and had background knowledge and were familiar with the pattern realized that it described a double play in baseball. For many, this passage is hard to comprehend. If you're someone who did not have background knowledge on baseball, you would not have been able to understand what the passage was referring to. Studies have shown that people understand what they read much better if they already have background knowledge about the subject. Whether they were good readers or bad readers didn't matter nearly as much as what they knew. Background knowledge is important to reading comprehension in the following ways. It provides vocabulary, it allows you to bridge local gaps that writers leave, it allows chunking, which increases room in working memory and thereby makes it easier to tie ideas together. And finally, it guides the interpretation of ambiguous sentences.
All right, Ray, I have a task for you.
Each
card has a letter on one side and a digit on the other side. There is a rule. If there's a vowel on one side, there must be an even number on the other side. Your job is to verify whether this rule is met for this set of 4 cards and to only turn over the minimum number of cards necessary to do so. So which cards would you turn over? Here's the rule again. If there's a vowel on one side, there must be an even number on the other side.
This is a little difficult. The rule is not something I'm quite familiar with. I might have to take a look at maybe A, because that's a vowel and there should be an even number there. Do I have to look at the 2? Make sure there's a vowel on the other side. I don't think I care about B. And
So,
3 is, I'm not, this is
pretty challenging?
It's a little challenging. I feel like I'm missing a piece.
So you're not really familiar. You've never heard this rule before. You've never played a game with it.
Vowel, even number.
What if I tried a different task for you?
All right.
Okay. How about let's move these 4 cards?
All right.
And I think this is something you're familiar with.
What is that?
How about some beer?
Beer? I mean, maybe.
31, Coke, Coca-Cola.
Okay.
And 17. All right, so I have a
So
new
this is
rule.
what I drink in the morning. And this is what I
Okay.
drink when I get home.
All right, here's your new rule. You are to imagine you're a bouncer at a bar. Each card represents a patron with the person's age on one side and their drink on the other. You are to enforce this rule. If you're drinking beer, then you must be 21 or over. Your job is to verify whether this rule is met for this set of 4 people. You should turn over only the minimum number of cards necessary to do so. So what cards would you have to turn over to verify that the rule, if they're drinking beer, they must be 21 or over?
Well, I'd first have to check the age of the person that's drinking this beer. So I'd have to flip this one.
Okay.
31, I don't really care if they're drinking Coke or beer, so I'd probably leave them alone. Whoever's drinking Coke, I think I'd leave them alone. And I think only this other one here, this 17-year-old, I'd have to make sure that they are not partaking in alcohol. So I think I'd only flip beer and 17.
You're correct. So why was this task so much easier? Because essentially, the first task, I'm gonna set it back up, the exact same thing, the same rule applied, you would only have to check the A card and the 3 card. Why was it so much easier to do when I referred to it as the drinking age of 21 or older?
Well, I'm a lot more familiar with the rule of the drinking age than the vowel and the even number. So having that knowledge made it a lot easier to analyze these 4 different situations. Then that situation was kind of foreign to me.
So having background knowledge is necessary to make you a good thinker.
I think so. I think we've proved it here.
All right. Thank you.
Hey guys!
Hi!
So the next part of chapter 2 was on the premise that factual knowledge improves your long-term memory. So in the study that they did in this part of the chapter, they basically did kind of, they gave subjects 2 passages to read. So the first one was on like science-based and like motor learning and neuroscience and all kinds of, I don't know, stuff that I'm not interested in. Maybe Miss Kendra knows more about it than I do. And the second passage was on cakes that are made with oil instead of butter. And basically what happened was even the people that listed they were more interested in science rather than baking, they still tended to remember more about the second passage. And that was really due to the fact that they had more factual knowledge about baking. Cakes are usually made with
Butter,
not oil. So that's like a solid fact that pretty much everybody knows. So they tended to remember more about the second passage. Even if they were more interested in science, the first passage, like they liked reading better. When asked to recall information, they tended to remember more about the right passage.
A lot more people bake cakes on a normal basis. They actually do learn about science on a normal day-to-day.
Yeah,
business,
or just like
yeah.
it's just like just the more facts that you know about something, the more like long-term memory, more it's going to retain in your long-term memory. Also, our notes.
There's kind of a saying that goes with it, the rich get richer. So the more information that you start out with, the more you're able to retain. So if you had more general information on cake, like being rich, you're able to get richer by learning more about it, so you're able to retain more information about the cake. But since you have less knowledge about the science passage, you won't be able to retain as much. So you'll be able to learn a lot more about the cake when you read the passage.
So basically, as putting this in the classroom, I feel like a lot of times we are introducing these critical thinking concepts without making sure that our kids have a solid factual knowledge first. So we're expecting them to figure out these hard problems, but we're kind of setting them up to fail in a way. So even though we should be introducing things in a real world context and stuff, you want to make sure that they have a strong factual knowledge first, so then when they have to apply those critical thinking skills, it's more in their long-term memory.
For example, in Digits, there's a lot of questions on stock market and how many kids know about stock market in 7th grade. So just reading the problem makes it very difficult for them to solve because they don't have a basic knowledge on the stock market. So the more information we can give to them about these types of situations, the better they're even going to understand the questions that involve the math once they have background knowledge on what they're reading.
Yep. And that's that part of chapter 2.
Yay!
Our section of the book is Implications for the Classroom. If factual knowledge makes cognitive process work better, the obvious implication is that we must help children learn background knowledge. How can we ensure that this will happen? The first thing that we need to do is make sure our children read as much as possible so they have the background knowledge that they may need.
In our section, Implications for the Classroom, it is important that we evaluate what knowledge to instill in our kids. Case in point, in my situation with the ELL student, I have to choose what background knowledge that I can capture and let them understand the skill and vocabulary through pictures so that I grasp some of that background knowledge that they have so I can continue start early with our kids, we've been able to sort out the vocabulary. Definitely at home, what vocabulary parents should use. Do parents ask children questions and listen to the children's answers? Do the children observe their parents? This is where it is instilled at the early age and promote that love of learning.
So in the book, they talked about how shallow knowledge is better than everything else. It's better than no knowledge. So for math, the most shallow knowledge is their multiplication facts, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, fractions, that kind of stuff. And for us, those are the things that our students are lacking the most in, and that kind of stop them up later. So if we could get them that knowledge down pat at an earlier age, we could move forward a lot easier throughout the years. I know for 8th grade we teach slope, and slope is one of the hardest things for the kids to grasp, but it's really just two subtraction problems in a fraction. And because it's a fraction and a subtraction of positives and negatives and things, it really stops them up. So that's something that if that wasn't an issue, we could be able to move a lot further and get more into the real life uses. One of the ways that we combat a lot of their misknowledge in math is to show short videos, short clips to kind of catch their grasp. I know for dilation, we were teaching, they didn't really have too much background knowledge on that, so we showed a short Honey, I Shrunk the Kids video to kind of stimulate it, because then they could see, oh, that means things get bigger and smaller, but they never said that in the movie. They just said, we shrunk them. Well, shrinking is a dilation, and it kind of stimulated them to see, why are we doing this, and where can we use it later? This could work for any subject area. I know that history, talking a lot about the different wars and such, and if they don't know the layout, then they don't really know how the wars are happening or why it's important. So one piece of shallow knowledge for that might be the math skills. If they don't know where things are located, everything else gets more difficult. Shallow knowledge is really important, because when they're reading, even though our biggest solution we started here to make the kids read more, if they don't understand what they're reading, then reading more isn't really helping. So a lot of our students don't have the proper background knowledge, and we have to provide it. I feel like videos are probably the easiest way to instill a lot of that background knowledge, short discussions, because then it's not reading about things that I don't know about to find out things that I don't know about in other books. We can give them the knowledge they need in a way that they can receive it, and then when they are reading, it's not a struggle. Then they're liking it because they're not confused.
All you do is eat and sleep. I want you to get some education. Here's my library card. Why don't you go down there and take out a few books? It's time you learned how to do something besides eating and sleeping.